back, everyone, to episode 8 of the Minot Business Podcast, presented by Bennett Creative Media. I am your host, Dustin Bennett, and once again, Wednesday morning, we have another wonderful guest. This week's guest is Dustin Miller. Dustin, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I am fantastic. As always, we're going to hop right into the podcast, start ripping you with questions. So, Dustin, for people that have no idea who you are, you know, maybe someone just moved to town. They're like, oh, who's Dustin Miller? What do you do? And what would you explain to them of, you know, what's under your umbrella of things Dustin Miller does?
Perfect. First things first, thanks for having me out here.
Oh, not a problem.
The first thing that we kind of got into for me is kind of known for IT around the city area. Yeah, so Pro IT is the name of the business that I operate. And so anything that includes computers, servers, networking, I usually do a high level. To that point, if I go in depth, it gets really ugly. After that, I would say if you're in for the entertainment side, if people have heard what I've done, I do the Family Feud show. I do some other games as well, but probably more well known for that in the area than I am for IT. So what I say is I'm an introvert during the day and extrovert at night.
So Pro IT, those are two totally different fields. You got Pro IT where, you know, I assume you're working on computers and servers and all that stuff, and then you're being an entertainer. How do you blend those two personalities? Have you always been someone that had the two, you know, kind of introvert during the day and extrovert at night, like you said?
You know, I kind of have. The biggest thing that we used to do, or I do kind of in my business, is I'm part of the sales side. So I'm out communicating with everybody on a day-to-day basis. So
you're not actually fixing the computers?
I do that too, but on a very small scale, whereas I'm going to go and sell the solution to what the clients need.
So Pro IT, did you originally start with that? Was your first foot in the door pretty much, hey, I'm going to start my own business, or did you start somewhere else, or how did Pro IT get started?
Perfect. So what it is we all used to work. So there was a handful of us that worked for a different company, and we kind of split off from that company because of a, long story short, a bad transition.
Okay.
So 3 of us started Pro IT. So it was me, it was myself, and then I have 2 partners out in Wilson, Steve Powell and Steve Kemp.
Okay.
Where we started Pro IT and then kind of got that rolling after all that.
So when you were deciding to start the business, was there anything where you're like, should I start it? Should I not start it? Did you have a bunch of different options you were weighing on going through? Or did you know right away, hey, I want to start this business?
I think we knew right away. Obviously, it's a huge risk, right? So if you got something, you've got a paycheck, steady paycheck coming in, all of a sudden, we're going to start a business. We're going to do it, and we're going to take. So when we started, it was three of us owners and 5 employees. So we're literally starting this with 8 people day one.
So you're not even starting from ground zero. You're like, hey, we have a full team already.
Yeah. So the company we used to work for didn't want to do IT. So we split it off, saying you can have the clients, you can have the existing contract. So we had a business stuff in place already, but it was still, are they going to come with us? Are they going to go somewhere else? Is what kind of risk going to take? So again, we had a good relationship with our clients. So it was a pretty smooth transition, knock on wood.
So did you siphon some of those clients from your old job? Did those clients that you had at the old place want to do IT, but they didn't want to provide it? So then you kind of said, okay, we'll do IT with these clients?
Right. So the clients that we had with that old prior company, like that company wasn't doing IT anymore.
Yeah.
So they were so their choice was have an in-house person, go through a different third party like us, or go through us.
Okay, cool.
And since we have the history with them, they're like, oh, we're going to, like, nothing changed.
Yeah.
Like they didn't see anything.
So it's pretty much like, hey, we're staying with these guys, or we got to find someone new.
Right. And you got to start all over. So trying to find a new provider isn't always the easiest thing to do.
Was there a weird transition period where, like, how did you ease that transition for the clients, or was it pretty simple on that?
It was a pretty seamless transition. So we started because, you know, we didn't have a building, we didn't have a location. So obviously with the IT side of things, we can do our business from pretty much anywhere. And, you know, we can do 90% of our work remote. So we had an office in Minot, a very small office. There's 3 of us in Minot, and there's 5 in Williston. The guys in Williston worked on a job site. So if we had a client, they had an open desk, we'd have a person sitting there at all these locations. Really? So we try to keep as little overhead as possible.
So did it ever move into a business with more overhead where you guys had a bigger office, or have you kept it pretty streamlined?
No.
What was the process like transitioning?
It was a process. So I would say in the first, we had an office at a very small rent. Our overhead was tiny.
Okay.
But if you would have saw it, you would have laughed. But it was fine. We didn't bring anybody to us. We went and provide all the services at their site. So if I'm pitching a sale, I'm going to their location to do it.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the process, I want to pivot now to a little bit more of the marketing side and getting things going there. I understand you have a van with the sticker on the side, right?
Yeah.
The wrap. Do you still have that?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the process like for deciding, hey, I want to get this van with a Pro IT wrap on the side? Because that's the first place I ever saw and heard of Pro IT was that thing ripping around town.
Right.
So what was the process like for deciding to get that?
So that van, actually, a partner of mine, he bought it, and he bought it for a snow machine. So back in the day, Williston didn't have any snow.
Mhm.
He bought this thing, bought a snow machine so he could put snow on a little hill so his kids could go sledding. Well, he bought it, got the snow machine, we got snow. So we never even got to use the thing. So then they had this thing sitting there, and it was just a white pile of just, European van right there.
Yep.
And so we kind of pulled the trigger. It's like, hey, we need to, because everybody loves it. It's a cool looking machine.
Mhm.
So we put some ATV tires on it, and we've decided, for marketing, because we were still a small company, and invest money into a big wrap, it costs a lot of money. So how will it do for traction? Well, we found out real quick. You go wherever you're at, and that thing,
it's like a moving billboard.
it's like a go-kart. Like that thing doesn't go fast at all, but everybody grabs their phones and everybody's taking pictures of it. So again, that was a great marketing, plan that we did for that. And everybody found out like, hey, what's Pro IT? Check it out. Our website's on there and all that kind of stuff.
So would you say that was your biggest piece, your piece of marketing material, or what were some other avenues you guys took to start gaining more clients in the beginning, and some different strategies you used to grow the company?
Marketing's a really hard thing too. And everybody knows that. There's no easy, like we did this and it solved everybody's problems. That wasn't it at all. So we started slow. And obviously word of mouth is how you want it to spread the most, because that's when most people are going to come and find your business. Because if you know somebody, say, hey, they're really good, go through them. So, we did a little bit of Facebook stuff, but, to go full-fledged thousands of dollars of marketing, we really didn't do much. It was the key people. So as us owners, we're going around, we're the salespeople. So we're going around, we go to events and stuff like that, talk to people. I've lived here my whole life, so I know quite a few people. So it's just a matter of just kind of going around that, and you get a little stuff here and there that comes trickling in.
So would you say that a majority of the work you get from word of mouth?
Yes.
And how important is it to, because this for the video business all the time, if you don't do a good job, you're not going to get referrals.
Right.
But how important is it to work with a client, do a good job for this client to, in the end, bring you back to another client?
Right. So that's exactly it, is you have to do the best job you can at a good rate. Right. So if I'm going to go out and if I do a bad job, I want to make sure I come back and fix it, because I want to continue them as a client. I want them to tell their friends, because they have business friends as well.
Yep.
And they're going to pass it along to them. Therefore, you always want to do the best you can and be fair with them at all times.
That's what's weird about getting into business now. I've been doing it for about 3.5 years, and you don't realize that business people are friends with business people.
Right.
So it's kind of this weird circle, this weird network, how everybody knows each other. And, we've talked about this on multiple podcasts before. If you burn one bridge, you never know.
There's more to come.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about some obstacles now.
Okay.
Were there any obstacles that you had to overcome when in the beginning of the business or in the business as a whole?
The things you don't know are the obstacles that you come across. You're like, holy smokes. Now, how do we handle this? Obviously a big part is money. All of a sudden you got big projects. You got to throw big money at it. Sometimes there's that, or you're collecting of the money. We've been, fortunate for the most part. We haven't had any terribly huge obstacles like that.
Yeah.
Or even, obviously in my business, a network crashes, a server crashes, and this relies on someone's business and how they make money. We had a client where, they had 2 hard drives crash on a server within a 3-hour period. So because of how our RAID array works, it's, anyways, they were down for 24 hours. So 2 years prior, I had a conversation with this client saying, how long can you be down so we can plan this accordingly? How long can you be down before it really costs you money?
Yeah.
And they're like, 3 days. We can 3 days. We can have the people can still be doing things. A lot of stuff was even cloud back then. But
so did you think to yourself 3 days is too long?
Way too long. But it's fine with him.
Yeah,
I'm suffice. So he was down for a total of 24 hours, and he was losing his sugar everywhere. He's like, I can't. This is costing me. I was like, we had this discussion. We're working. Like we're gonna get it, and we got it going. But we gained another client for that very reason. He was a client with us. They moved to a services in Denver, and after 2 years later, he's like, you know what? You guys are really good. He came back, but during that transition, his server died and he didn't have email for 2 weeks, and it's a big oil company. So it was to him. And I was like, and I told him, I was like, The worst thing that I had was they were down for 24 hours. He's like, okay, now you're just bragging. I was like, no, I want to get you up and going. And they weren't even a client with us yet, but we're going to go out above and beyond to try to, earn their, respect. And
that's funny that he's like, 3 days will be fine. And then by hour 8, he's
once
like
it happens,
ripping his hair out.
like there's a lot of stuff we do. And a lot of people don't realize, let's just say a backup or disaster recovery, business continuity. What do I do if this happens? What happens if you have you're at a wedding, all of a sudden one of your camera dies? Okay. I need to have a backup plan just in case that doesn't go right. So a lot of people don't, they're like, it's fine, do
a lot of businesses have backup plans like that for their?
They do somewhat, they just have a backup, right? So let's just say you back up the data. Well, you still have to reinstall everything, which takes time. So, or if you have a ton of, if you have terabytes of information on the cloud, it doesn't just download and, it takes hours. And then once you download, you still have to restore it and throw it on the image and stuff like that to get it back into their environment. Long story short, until someone has a disaster, it's not that important. When they've had a disaster, they said, I want it all. Like a big thing now is people getting hacked, right? So if your email account's getting hacked, someone jumps into your emails, writing emails to someone else. I mean, I can go through a lot of horror stories and they're good and they're also bad. I don't like to do scare tactics with people, but I want them to know real life scenarios, what's happening.
I suppose that works for the sales process for you then. You say, hey, like, I know you don't think you need this, but we just had a client last week.
Right. Here's what happens.
You
could have wired $500,000 in your accountant wires it and the bank approves it,
And that's what's, so obviously I store a lot of video footage. I have I don't even know what it's called, a Synology disk station. And that's like 100 terabytes. And it's like, okay, I have that connected. And if like one of them fails, they'll send me a new one or something like that. But it's like, maybe me and you need to have a conversation about what I can do about that NAS. But pivoting a little bit now into pro IT, going into being an entertainer.
Yep.
So you started the first business and, you had these partners, I assume with Encore events. Do you have any partners in Encore events?
Nope, it's just me.
So going from having partners to doing it on your own, how was that transition? Was it better? Was it worse? What did you like about it? What did you hate about it?
I think it's easy because obviously I started small. Kind of how I got my start in that is every year I do the Christmas party for Pro IT. I'm the kind of in charge of entertainment. I like to have fun. I like to do games, like keep people involved. When I was in town driving around, Ryan Chevrolet had a Family Feud sale. And I was like, I wonder if they play Family Feud against each other, like other, the dealerships. They didn't. It was just a sale that they had going on because it's a popular, game show at the time. I was like, I bet I could do that. I'm going to make a Family Feud set for my Christmas party. So then I'm kind of going out and going on the internet.
Did you pitch that idea to them?
No, not to them at all. But I was like, internally, I'm going to use it for my own company. I was like, I'm going to make questions. We're going to have a good time. So then I kind of scoured the internet and figured out different ideas, how to make my set. Well, I built it and then I was like, you know what, I'm going to hit up some of my clients, see if they want to do it for their Christmas party, not knowing if this thing's going to work or not. And then even my wife is like, what if it sucks? I was like, holy cow. I hope not.
You're like, lead with your good front foot forward or whatever.
From there, it just kind of blew up, but it was good. I had like 5-6 parties in the first month. And after that, it just kind of.
So was it kind of easy sailing right from the beginning?
It wasn't as nervous, because you're going into something you don't know how long it's going to take. You don't know how many people you can handle. Can everybody hear it? Can everybody see it? Is it a game where everybody's going to like? Is there people in the crowd that are, because when you're in the entertainment side, your focus is to get everybody involved. If you're a DJ at a wedding, your focus is, I want everybody dancing. Whoever's not dancing.
Play good music.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So you want to get as much people involved. Well, fortunately enough, the feud, whether you're watching or playing, it's super fun. So you got everybody involved from ages, 18 to 70.
So what does the process look like or what did it look like for starting the research and the figuring out how to build the set, all of that? How long did that take?
It probably took a couple months to kind of get everything planned out. How do I do tables? First, I bought a trailer. I just bought a trailer and then I measured the trailer. From there, I had to measure how I'm going to make everything. Well, while I was making my first set and the tables, they're big, they're huge, they're awesome.
Are you building these sets?
I built them. Yeah. Okay. So I built all the sets, but
so like contractor Dustin's in there with the hammer and nails.
Yeah. It was my dad helped me quite a bit too, but I built this first set and I was 1.5 inches too long in my trailer. After I made some mods, I was like, okay, that's not going to work. Okay. Now we're going to do this. Well, I had to get a different trailer. So then it worked, but still.
Okay. So everything fit in there.
Yeah.
So when you were going into these shows and these events, did you kind of have to pitch it to these clients that like, hey, here's the thing, or were they kind of on board from the beginning once you presented?
When I just pitched, it was like probably my main clients. So they know my personality and they're like, you know what? That sounds like fun. I know you're a fun guy and you've got a good, let's try it. Yeah, let's do it. Well, from those, the social media is a big marketing tool for me. Whereas everybody's on Snapchat, everybody's on Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of stuff where they're going to share that information. So literally from there, that was the word of mouth just kind of going.
So I assume these games you have to write for them. You have to like for the family. I
have to come up with all the questions.
Correct.
And answers.
How is that stressful doing that?
So I scour the internet and make sure I find topics that are funny and some answers that would be good. Some work, some don't, but I've done so many shows where someone will say an answer and I'm like, oh, I'm changing. I'm adding one. I'm changing. Or if there's one that no one gets, I take it out.
Okay. So are a lot of them like repeat shows, or is it a new show for every single client? Because I suppose you can reuse a few.
Well, that's exactly it. So if I'm going to your business and I've been to your business before, I've got everything written out. So if I'm doing your business again the next year, you're getting a whole different set of questions.
Yeah. Okay.
If I've never done a business, I start with my whammy ones. Like you're going to get it and you're going to love it because I'm going to get you hook, line, and sinker. I'm going to get you right back into it. So you want to do more shows. I've had many shows where people like, just put me down for next year. You're one of the most fun parties we've had.
So they do it once and then they're like, sign me up for next year.
Yeah. So I've done, my probably longest going show. I've done 8 shows for a group.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's pretty sweet
because I do all kinds of games, but otherwise like for the feud, I've done the feud every time. So I have over 700 questions.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So you have the Family Feud part of it. Are there other games that you do? Is it like a full entertainment company or is it specifically the Family Feud?
No, I got other games too. So that's a big one. Name That Tune is a fun one. And that's usually like an add-on, right? So afterwards I do the feud and that's hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah.
We can do a Name That Tune for another hour and a half as well. So it really gets the people into it. Everybody loves it. They usually have some cocktails. So it's just everybody singing. It's super awesome.
How have you felt? So the 2 different businesses that you run, Pro IT, you're working mainly kind of with clients and businesses, and the entertainment side of things, you're kind of working with the public. Not really, because you're still working with these businesses that are actually paying you money, but you're in front of a different audience.
Right.
How is it working on 2 ends of the spectrum? Really showing, the public these things, entertaining the public versus, working strictly with a group of people at Pro IT.
On the commercial side, it's nice. You're still working with the public people, right? So they're working in the commercial side. But it's a whole different realm, whereas you're a very general. So when someone has a problem with ITs, they're mad. They're calling me because their computer doesn't work. That's a problem. They're always upset when you're done. You feel like a superhero because you just fixed it. You're like, that's it.
So not many happy calls coming down the Pro IT.
So now it's polar opposites on the entertainment side. I'm literally there having fun with people for 3 hours in the evening. So it's a whole different spectrum of the business side where this is, if they're down, they're mad. If it's up, it's fine. Like you don't like if a person's computer is working, they don't call me and say, hey, I want to thank you for your services.
Just wanted to call and let you know things are going great.
Where on the other side, it's like, this is the best thing ever. This is fun. People get upset when their answers aren't up there, but.
So do you have a team for Encore events, or is it mainly just you? So obviously Pro IT, you have a team, but Encore events, what does the team look like around that?
So it's me for doing shows, and I have another buddy of mine, Chris Bennett, has been doing some shows in the past too, where if I have overflow, he's open and he's done probably a half a dozen shows for me as well.
Okay, cool.
But I always have to have a helper. So I've got about 15 different people I choose from, depending on who's available. If I got something during the day, if I got something on the weekend, a weeknight. So someone who can travel with me, and I've been kind of traveling all over North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and into Montana as well.
That's pretty sweet. So what's your North Star with Encore events then? Are you wanting to go full time into that, or do you kind of like the yin and yang of both?
So the Encore is obviously a nights and weekends thing. In the summertime, I slow it down because lake season and people like to go out on the weekends. They don't really like to sit inside. Whereas the wintertime, I'd work every single weekend, 4 nights a week. That's fine. I would do a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday if I could. Whereas the IT side, during the day, I'm doing a lot of stuff. So my home office, we have an office in town, but I work out of my office at my house. So I'm constantly working with people. It's nice to get out. I can talk to people and do a lot of stuff remote as well. So it's going to be I like it. So I can sit there and build up, and then I've got different ideas streaming here, fixing some problems here, doing some quotes or anything like that.
So splitting up of the two businesses, how has that been internally? Do you have any strategies or ways that, like, hey, okay, this is my pro IT time. Okay, now I'm on Encore events time.
Yeah.
Because there's only so many hours in a day.
Well, that's exactly it. So pro IT is during the day,
okay,
and then my evening. So if I'm, after dinner or whatever and the weather's bad,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to sit on the computer at nighttime, or else when everybody goes to bed, I'm usually up late, a couple hours, prepping for a show and making sure I have everything loaded up. Because during the day, it's busy doing the IT side, consulting with clients and stuff like that.
And that's kind of the stuff that you can't really do.
You can't just
do past 5 p.m. because people go home.
You do, but that's when I'm doing quotes and stuff too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the thing was, when people start businesses, that they don't realize how many hours you're going to put into that business.
Yeah.
When we first opened Pro IT, I was working, it's an 8 to 5 job,
mm-hmm.
but since there's only 5 of us, I was doing the accounting, I was doing, the sales, I was doing the payroll, right. And you're going from, and I was literally working till 1 to 2 a.m. 4 nights a week.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to transition into, is for these people that are starting businesses, or maybe they just started one, they're wondering how it goes. Talk to me about the actual grind that you have to go through. And I don't love using that word because you see it online so many times,
right.
like, oh, the entrepreneurial grind, but talk to me about the actual effort that it takes.
Yeah. So there's, a lot of people, when they're working for someone, they're thinking, oh, I can do this. And I see what kind of money they're making.
Yep.
With Pro IT, we have 36 employees. If I'm charging an hourly rate for 36, it looks good on paper.
Yeah.
But that just means we have 36 times the cost than a person that's got like 1-2 people.
Correct.
And what you have to put into it, you got your marketing, you got your sales, you've got, if the person to have that faucet of, I can do all that, that's great. Mm-hmm. I hope it works out, and I want everybody to succeed. My competitors, I know every single one of my competitors, and I like them. I'm going to go and talk to them. And if I go into a client site and they're like, hey, we use these guys, like, they're great guys. Like, they're awesome. They know what they're doing. And,
mm-hmm.
it's like, I'm not going to try to steal someone, it's like, unless someone says, hey, I want to change, what do you do? Mm-hmm. I give my sale pitch. So, but again, if you're starting a business, you're in charge. If you're by yourself, you're in charge of your sales, you're in charge of your marketing, you're doing the work, you're doing the accounting, there's a lot involved. And
it's almost somewhat overwhelming.
Man, because then you realize the tax time comes and you're like, man, I have to, and your hours, you're spending extra hours into something. And I hope it pans out, and if people have that drive, they'll get there.
And I think it's worth it. That's one thing to touch on, is it's worth it to do it. And a lot of people, the only reason they fail is because they stop short. You know what I mean?
Right.
They stop before they actually get to, I always say, nothing will ever fail if you don't stop doing it.
Right.
It might take you 10 years to get there. Encore events might have taken 10 years to actually start working. It didn't for you, which is great. But if you would have stopped after year 3, you would never known, because it wouldn't go. And that's the one business piece of advice I pitch, is that, like, hey, just keep doing it.
Right. And it's, when I did it, and you get a lot of doubters, right? So you're going to have the people saying, that's not going to work out. That's not going to last long. And, a lot of people's like, so I did it, and it was taken off on the entertainment side, and people are like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I do IT, and I'm a game show host.
Yeah.
And people are like, you're a game show host? Like, what's that? So,
and there's always the naysayers. That's what I was going to ask you about. Did you get a lot of feedback like, hey, this is a stupid idea, or hey, look at this guy doing this, and this?
It was a laughable thing. Like, you're doing a game show. And I was like, yeah, no, it's going to be a good time. It's fun. It's super fun. Then once people have heard about it. So, I was telling you earlier, I was out golfing with a guy, and he said, what do you do? I was like, well, I do IT work, and I'm a game show host. I do the feud. And he's like, oh, you're that guy. Yeah. So the good part is the word of mouth is going around, and people are knowing what it is. And once you see it, it's awesome. It's a good time.
So I had another question while you were talking about, you have 36 people on your team. How did you go about growing the team from the original 3 business partners and 5 employees to the now team of 36?
Yeah. So it was a slow but steady growth. So we, obviously the big thing is making sure you got the income to come in to grow everybody accordingly. So we are kind of spread out. So we're in Minot, Williston. I have a guy in Canada. I have 2 people in Texas. I have one in Virginia. We got some in Bismarck. So we every spread out, because in the IT world, you can really do your work
from anywhere,
from wherever you're at, as long as you got people on the floor doing things. But having the right management and people in place helps form that.
Okay. So
mold.
Sorry, you got my mind twirling there now that you told me all these locations. Hiring people, it's almost like you don't want to put the cart before the horse, right?
Right.
So how did you go about, do you have to, obviously you have to make sure the money's there to hire,
Right.
but what is the vetting process of deciding, okay, do I want to bring this person on?
So when we go through and we go through multiple areas to kind of get someone out there to try to find a job, if we know someone by word of mouth, or if we know somebody, we're going to have that discussion. And we usually have a couple interviews with the person because I want to make sure that person fits the mold with what we have. So a big saying that we have when we started, we're techs that you can talk to. So you can have conversations because everybody has that IT person. They're really good. They know what the floorboard colors are like, but I want to make sure they can have a conversation with the client because communication is a huge thing with, our business. So if I do a job and my guy doesn't talk to you, it's like, is it fixed? Is it not fixed? Is it working?
He walks in, fixes it, walks out.
If not, I'm
going
to get a phone call. Right. That's exactly it. So I want to make sure this person has a little bit of a personality to come in and understand what's going on and know how to fix the issue. Because in our environment, there's a vast amount of things that we work on.
So I want to bounce back to the event side of things. There's this big common, well, I don't know if it's a common misconception, but people that put themselves out there on the internet, on the interweb, you're obviously subject to people leaving comments, all these different types of things. How did you have to battle with putting yourself out there with this new idea at all?
So
or did you kind of know from the beginning, hey, I know what I'm about, I'm just going to do it?
It was I'm going to wing it. I'm going to do what it is, because there's people in around the country that do the same thing.
Yep.
And I've seen some of the YouTube stuff and, so there's a lot of room for improvement. So, I want to form this into what I think is going to be good. And it's been, successful so far, but it's not for everybody. Right. So a lot of people are gonna be like, well, he doesn't know, and you see that stuff, right? You're going to see negative stuff or someone makes a comment because their team didn't win or this answer should have been on there.
Family Feud sucks.
I've had so many interesting, I could go on for hours on like the shows, the good and the bad.
Okay.
But there's some funny stuff too. And you're like, yeah, that is what it is, and to me, I don't worry about the little things, the good stuff's going to, rise higher than the little stuff. So
that's a perfect soundbite there. Only a couple more questions for you here. What would be, so you've started 2 companies. What would be your best piece of advice for getting a company off the ground?
The biggest thing is
if someone was starting one tomorrow.
Yeah, just so they know you're going to be putting in a ton of hours. So if they're a person, they want it, like you said, the grind, you're going to have to make sure you're going to have to put in the grind. Because if you want it to be successful, you got to put in everything you got into that to make it work. But again, supporting local. Like local is where it's at. You want to make sure you have a good repertoire with everybody to make sure you can, it's going to work, make sure there's a market for it and make sure, I know a lot of people, they have hobbies, right? And they're like, I want to do this for my full-time job. And, I'm going to sit back and be like, I want it to work for you, but you got to make sure there's a market. And if you can make that market,
because if no one's going to pay you to do it.
Well, that's exactly it. It might be a great idea. It might be easy. If it's easy, everybody's going to do it. Right. So you want to do something that's unique and something that you can do really well. You're going to want to enjoy it a little bit, And
that's why I always say there's this funny thing. I always say my dad's the best inventor that's never invented anything. We'll always be talking and then he'll say, oh my gosh, how good of an idea would this be? We should start a company around this. And I was like, do it. He's like, nah. So it's always like, he's always got these great ideas and he thinks they're great ideas. Some of them are good. Some of them are just horrible, but it's actually getting going, I think. Would you agree that it's kind of just, start somewhere?
Yeah, it is. It's hard to get that initial push. So a lot of people have, and myself included, I have other ideas of other businesses I want to do as well.
Yep.
But trying to push myself to get there where knowing you're like, there's a lot of hurdles. Knowing the business stuff I've done now, it's like, to get to that spot, it's like you look at it and you're like, I don't have the time.
You know what you're getting yourself
Well, that's
into
exactly it. You're like, it could work, but to risk. But again, if you look at a lot of business people around, they have, like I was at a convention and one of the co-founders of Netflix was up speaking. And I was like, whoa, this is great. Well, this guy showed a slide of 100 other businesses. You guys recognize these? No. Yeah, these are my fails. Like they have a lot of failures to have, that one, and probably afterwards too, right? So it was, him and some partners, and they did the whole Netflix, and they gave if you guys if you have time, look up how it got started in the process. It was an awesome little
that's
speech
sweet.
he gave. But again, a lot of these guys have a lot of failed businesses. You look at people like, they're successful. how many unsuccessful stuff did they have?
And that's, I always saw this graphic of Abe Lincoln, how he went through all this stuff and failed and lost this election. And then it was like 20 things. And at the very end is like became the president of the United States.
Right.
And that kind of rings true, but yeah, it is kind of funny that when you're starting a business, when you're young and you don't really know what it takes, you're kind of naive and you're like, oh, this is going to be great. And then you get in, you're working 100 hours a week. And it's like, oh my gosh.
Right.
So yeah, that might deter it a little bit from starting a second, third, fourth, fifth business. Couple more questions here for you. How do you celebrate your wins, business wins, and how do you kind of battle through those losses?
The wins are great. You build upon them, right? So you're like, what did I do right and what did I do wrong? So you want to focus on what you did right. So make sure you're going about like, okay, I did this way. Mm-hmm. How do I continue to do this to get that win, whether it's on the IT side or the entertainment side? Like, what did I do right? And then as the wrong for the losses, it's like, how do we fix ourselves so we don't come across that? There's situations where in the technology world, technology fails. You can buy a brand new vehicle and it's going to break down a month later. So I tell my clients, I can sell you an expensive system, but it's not perfect like I want it to be.
Something might happen.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So you obviously learn. So in the IT world, I used to work for a couple companies ago. I used to travel out in New York City and do a bunch of work out in New York City. So I'd go travel around, do all these companies, ride the subway, walk the streets, and kind of understand everything. So I was baptized by fire. So I learned a ton by screwing up.
Just throwing yourself in
because, well, the problem is you're in a panic and you're like, okay, you're really reading, you're doing it. If you're going to watch someone do it, you're not learning. Like you have to do it yourself to make sure you learn from those mistakes.
Last question I got for you. What is your North Star? I know you mentioned a couple more business ideas you have, but where do you see yourself, down the road? Are you starting more businesses? Are you focusing on one more than the other? What does the future look like for Dustin Miller?
I've got some friends too. We're kind of in the same boat. We're always like, what's the next thing? Mm-hmm. We always kind of throw ideas out, that's a hard question. I mean,
and I was gonna say, don't spill it if you have any great ideas.
No,
you're holding on
I've
to.
got nothing yet for great ideas, but there's a bunch of ideas in my head.
Yeah.
And I love the business side, but again, I really do love the entertainment side. If I could go drive around 5 days a week and just go do shows, it would be the greatest thing ever. But it gets old too. Like when I'm in my van, he'd get to places. I'm not young anymore, so it's like lifting and doing things. It's not but I like the business side of things.
Would you want to get to a bigger team, almost like a full team around the Encore event side of things?
It would be awesome if I could have a team come up and set up. So I just have to come and show up, do the show, talk to people afterwards, because networking's huge. So usually after the show, I sit around. Well, unfortunately, my helper I have has to start tearing down, putting stuff away and stuff like that. So I like to network big time afterwards.
Well, that's all the questions I got for you. Thanks for coming on, Dustin. Where can people find you and where can they find, your businesses on the interweb?
So on Facebook as well, or the website, we're proitnerds.com, or proitnd is our website also, or Encore events. So it's encorend.com on our website. And we're also on Facebook, so they can reach out to me through there.
Sweet. We will put that information down in the description so you guys can check both of those out. Dustin, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Easton. Appreciate it.
If you guys like this, please like, comment, subscribe, leave us a rating or a review on whatever you're listening to, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, any of those. Appreciate you watching. We will see you guys next week for episode 9 of the Minot Business Podcast.
Thank you.